Hi, welcome to Math for All, where everyone can learn more about math. Today, we will quickly learn about and evaluate some absolute values, and then we'll solve equations with absolute value signs. Get ready for fun and, I think, a different math experience. First, in case you haven't seen it before, or maybe you don't remember, absolute values are shown with these tall lines. The math definition is officially the distance away from zero. Like on this number line, I have located -3 and +3. When I ask the question, how far away from zero is -3? It's 3 steps away. How far away from zero is +3? Also 3 steps away. So, the absolute value of -3 and 3 is the same, +3. Now I'll summarize how my brain and a lot of students think about absolute value. The absolute value sign turns the value inside positive. Just be sure that if the value inside is already positive, the absolute value is powerless. The answer is just the number then. Absolute values can never be negative. The absolute value of -45 is 45, and the absolute value of 87 is 87. As I mentioned, an absolute value can never be negative, but it can seem like it. Evaluate negative absolute value of -5. You may have seen that when you see a negative parentheses and then another negative sign, you can turn them to positive. Like 4 minus -7 is 4 plus 7, which is 11. That is not what we have here. We start inside and then evaluate out. The absolute value of -5 is 5. And then there's that pesky negative sign in the front, which makes him back to negative again. Whenever there's a negative sign in front of an absolute value, the answer will be negative. Now, we have some that are a little bit more complicated. What is the absolute value of 17 minus 4? You must look at the absolute value as an invisible parentheses, where you don't just turn everything inside to positives. That would be illegal. We must figure out the number inside the absolute value and then pop it out by making it or keeping it positive. So our first step here is to solve 17 minus 4 equals 13. And then the absolute value of 13 is just 13. Likewise, the absolute value of 8 minus 10 would be the absolute value of -2, which turns into +2 when it comes out of the absolute value sign. All right, let's learn how to solve some of these. Solve the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 6. We are tempted to just ignore those pesky absolute value signs, and we would be half right, but for these, we are going to have 2 answers. I teach that to get rid of the absolute value sign, I branch the equation into 2 separate ones. I know, double the work. But the first branch stays the same as the original. And the second one, I just make the number that was the answer negative. I solve both for an answer of x equals 3 and -9. Notice if I put -9 in for x, I have the absolute value of -9 plus 3, which is the absolute value of -6, which equals 6, so it works. Let's summarize the steps in solving an absolute value equation. Step 1. Get the absolute value by itself. Step 2, check if the absolute value equals a negative number, because if it does, there's no solution because absolute values are never negative numbers. Step 3, branch it into 2 equations. The first one, just copy down, and the second one, copy the absolute value and then set it equal to the negative answer. Step 4, we get to solve both equations. Let's use these steps with our last example. Solve for x. The absolute value of x minus 7 over 2 minus 4 equals 3. Before we do the cool branching trick that I showed you, we need to get Mr. Absolute Value all by himself, which is step 1. I'll add 4 to both sides first. For the absolute value of x minus 7 over 2 equals 7. Now multiply by 2 on both sides for the absolute value of x minus 7 equals 14. For step 2, the absolute value equals 14, which is positive, so we have to keep going. Step 3, time to branch it to get it out of the absolute value. The first equation is x minus 7 equals 14, and the second equation is x minus 7 equals negative 14. Step 4, solve them both for x. X equals 21, and x also equals negative 14 plus 7 equals negative 7. Super awesome. Way to go, whether this is the first time you've ever seen absolute values before, or this is just your first time solving them in equations. Now you know how to branch the equations into 2 in order to solve them. Celebrate the moment and come back when you can to keep learning more about math.